The language of kindness, the morning sun, filtered through the tall windows of Riverside Medical Center, casting long golden stripes across the polished floor. Sarah Mitchell adjusted her navy blue scrubs and tucked a stray strand of brown hair behind her ear. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her clipboard. The first day jitters never quite went away, even after 3 years of nursing. Sarah had always been the quiet one. In school, she sat in the back row. At family gatherings, she listened more than she spoke. But when it came to her patients, something shifted inside her. She found a gentle courage she didn't know she possessed, a desire to comfort and heal that transcended her natural shyness. Today, she had been assigned to the private wing of the hospital, a place she had never worked before. The hallways here were quieter, more spacious, with artwork on the walls and plush seating areas that looked nothing like the busy corridors she was used to. Her supervisor, Mrs. Chen, had pulled her aside that morning with specific instructions. "Room 407, Mrs. Chen had said, her eyes kind but serious. "Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell. She's recovering from a minor surgery. Very important patient, Sarah. Her family is, well, they're prominent in the community. Just be yourself and give her the excellent care you always provide." Sarah nodded, her stomach doing small flip-flops. Prominent families meant scrutiny, expectations, and pressure, all things that made her want to disappear into the background. She paused outside room 407, taking a deep breath. Through the small window in the door, she could see an elegant older woman sitting up in bed, her silver hair styled gracefully despite her hospital stay. The woman gazed out the window with a distant expression, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Sarah knocked softly and entered. The woman turned toward her, and Sarah noticed something immediately. There was a particular quality to the way she looked, attentive but waiting, searching for visual cues. Sarah had seen that expression before during her volunteer work at the community center. Without thinking, Sarah set down her clipboard and stepped forward. Her hands moved with practiced ease, forming the shapes and gestures she had learned years ago. "Good morning," she signed, her fingers flowing through the familiar patterns. "My name is Sarah. I'm your nurse today." The transformation on Eleanor Hartwell's face was instantaneous. Her eyes widened, then softened with unmistakable relief and joy. A smile bloomed across her features, erasing the polite but distant expression she had worn moments before. Eleanor's hands moved swiftly in response. "You sign. Oh, my dear, you have no idea how wonderful this is. I've been here 2 days, and you're the first person who has spoken to me in my language." Sarah felt her own tension melting away. This was familiar territory, not the intimidating world of wealthy patients and private wings, but simply two people connecting in a language that transcended sound. "How are you feeling this morning?" Sarah signed, approaching to check Eleanor's vitals. "Any pain or discomfort?" As Eleanor responded, describing her condition and concerns, Sarah worked efficiently, her hands alternating between medical tasks and sign language. For the first time that morning, she forgot to be nervous. This was what she loved about nursing, these moments of genuine human connection. "You sign beautifully," Eleanor commented, watching Sarah record her blood pressure. "Where did you learn?" "My little brother," Sarah signed, a tender smile crossing her face. "He was born deaf. I learned when I was 8 years old so we could talk. He's in college now, studying computer science." Eleanor's face glowed with warmth. "Your parents must be very proud of both of you." They fell into an easy conversation, discussing everything from Eleanor's grandchildren to Sarah's brother's achievements. Sarah learned that Eleanor had been deaf since childhood, that she had built a successful career as an architect before retiring, and that she lived alone in a beautiful house by the river, filled with the abstract paintings she created in her free time. "My son worries too much," Eleanor signed with an affectionate but exasperated expression. "He insists on the best of everything for me. Sometimes I think he forgets I'm quite capable of taking care of myself." Sarah smiled, understanding the universal dynamic between caring children and independent parents. "He loves you," she signed simply. Throughout the morning, Sarah returned to check on Eleanor multiple times. Each visit felt less like work and more like visiting a friend. Eleanor's room became a haven of comfortable silence and flowing hands. A place where Sarah's shyness evaporated completely. It was during her afternoon rounds that Sarah met him. She was in Eleanor's room, helping adjust the pillows and discussing dinner options when the door opened. A tall man in an immaculately tailored charcoal suit strode in, his presence commanding immediate attention. He had dark hair touched with grey at the temples, sharp features, and intense blue eyes that seemed to assess everything in an instant. Sarah recognized him immediately, not personally, but from photographs in the hospital's administrative wing. This was James Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries, the largest employer in the city and one of the hospital's most generous benefactors. His donations had funded an entire pediatric ward. Her shyness came crashing back like a wave. She took an instinctive step backward, her hands freezing mid-sign. "Mr. Hartwell," she managed to say aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. But he wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on his mother, whose face had lit up like sunshine. Then his gaze shifted to Sarah's hands, still positioned in mid-conversation, and something extraordinary happened to his expression. The CEO mask cracked, revealing genuine, profound emotion underneath. "You sign," he said, his voice catching slightly. He moved to his mother's bedside, his own hands forming shapes. "Mom, you have someone who can talk with you." Eleanor's response was animated, her hands moving rapidly as she praised Sarah, explained their conversations, described how wonderful it was to finally be understood. James turned back to Sarah, and she saw that his eyes had grown suspiciously bright. "I apologize," he said, speaking aloud while simultaneously signing. "I should have arranged for an interpreter immediately." "I never thought—" He paused, running a hand through his hair. "The hospital has everything else, but I didn't think about what my mother would actually need most." "It's okay," Sarah signed, finding her courage again in the language that felt like home. "Your mother is wonderful. It's been my privilege to care for her. She hasn't stopped talking about you," James signed, a smile breaking through his formal demeanor. "When I asked how she was doing, she spent 10 minutes telling me about the kind nurse who speaks her language, who actually listens, who sees her as a person rather than just a patient or an obligation." Sarah felt her cheeks warming. "I was just doing my job." "No," Eleanor signed emphatically, reaching for Sarah's hand. "You did much more than that. You gave me dignity. You gave me connection." James was watching the exchange with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. "How long have you been with the hospital?" he asked. 3 years, Sarah replied, both signing and speaking. "Usually I work in the general ward." "You should be here," James said firmly. "In fact, I'm going to speak with the administration about establishing protocols. We need interpreters available. We need staff trained in sign language. We need to ensure that patients like my mother aren't isolated by our oversight." He pulled out a business card and handed it to Sarah. "I'd like your input on this initiative, if you're willing," and he hesitated, a vulnerability showing through his executive confidence. "I'd like to hire you as my mother's private nurse if you're interested. She's going to need in-home care for the next few weeks, and clearly, you're exactly what she needs." Sarah looked at Eleanor, who was nodding enthusiastically, her hands already forming the sign for please. "I would be honored," Sarah signed, meaning every word. As she left the room that evening, Sarah reflected on the unexpected turn her day had taken. She had walked in as a shy nurse, terrified of making mistakes in the hospital's prestigious wing. She was leaving as someone who had made a real difference, simply by offering the most basic gift, the ability to communicate, to be heard, to be seen. Sometimes, she realized, the most profound moments come not from grand gestures, but from small acts of human kindness, a language learned for love of a brother, shared freely with a stranger who became a friend. Behind her, through the window of room 407, Eleanor and James sat together, their hands moving in animated conversation. A mother and son connected by love and by the beautiful, silent language they both called home. And Sarah Mitchell, the shy nurse who had always hidden in the background, finally understood that her quiet gifts were exactly what the world needed. She just had to find the right place to share them. The end.